development which ensures sustainable consumption and production patterns. Then SDG 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. And 14 was conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. And 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forest, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. Then last but not least, the focus on peace or governance, okay, Sustainable Development Goals 16 and 17. So in order to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Then the focus on partnership, okay, means of implementation, all goals. So to strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. So these are the 17 goals of sustainable development. So let's talk about let's conceptualize of sustainable development with an Asian perspective. So I think all of you know about Asia. Asia consists of 48 countries, okay? But more than 4.6 billion people live in Asia. That means more than half world's population live in Asia. So it is projected that world middle class will reach at 5.5 billion by 2030 in the world, okay? But 87% of that will be from Asia. Even only China and India will represent 43.3% of world middle class by 2030. So this leads to unsustainable economic activities in Asia. Then 35% of global GDP, and the world's biggest economy, China, then most probably the India is coming forward. Then the multilateral trade liberalization, as you know, the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, then Trans-Pacific Partnership, and also the ASEAN Trade Bloc, and so on, okay? So these are the brief profile of Asia. So let's look at the progress, overall progress of sustainable development among East and South Asia and Asian countries. So if you look at this table will show you the overall performance or progress of sustainable development goals in Asia. If you look at the first three goals, goal number 1, no poverty, then clean water and sanitation, goal number 6, then decent work and economic growth, goal number 8. These three goals are on track. That means they are progressing, okay? But if you can see the arrow, okay, upward arrow refers to it is progressing. But if you look at the dot, the color yellow, red, okay, that means significant challenges remain there, okay, in order to achieve those goals. Then goal number 2, zero hunger, good health and well-being. Goal number 3, then goal number 4, quality education. Then goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Then the industry, innovation and infrastructure. Then climate action. Then peace, justice, and a strong institution. All of them are moderately increasing, okay? Moderately increasing. You can see the arrow. It shows that it is moderately increasing. But if you look at the red color dot, it refers the measure. Then it is all of them are located in dangerous location, okay? Red zone. They are located in red zone. That means significant challenges remain there. Then in terms of goal 5, gender equality, sustainable cities and communities, life below water, then partnership for the goals. If you see the performance is stagnating, that means it's not increasing or decreasing. It is stagnant. You can see the arrow to the right hand side, okay? It refers that it is, all of them are stagnant, is not progressing at all. Then goal number 15, life on land is decreasing, not progressing, not stagnant, is decreasing, which is more vulnerable. Then there are two goals, reduce inequality, goal number 10. The responsible consumption and production data are not available for these two goals. Most of the countries in Asia, okay? So this is the overall performance of sustainable development goals among East and South Asian countries. Let's look at one by one with some specific example. Let's say, yeah, the first goal is end poverty. That means no poverty. So no one will be left behind. Put poverty in the museum. Who said? Dr. Muhammad Yunus, Nobel laureate, who said, put poverty in the museum. So that is the world leaders' target, to end poverty. However, Asia has remarkably contributed in poverty reduction. Okay. However, Asia is home to huge number of poor people. Please look at this table. You can see here the East Asia and Pacific. You can look at the $1.9. Okay, number of poor people in millions. You can 2020 was in September was 29 million. What happened after 1 year? March 2021. Same. There is no progress. Not decreasing the number of poor people. Then look at the next column. See the under $3.20 per day. September 2020, it was 179 million. But by March 2020, it is 174. That means slightly decreasing the number of poor people. Okay. Similarly, under $5.5, we can see the 580 million was in September 2020. By 2021 March, it is 571 million. That means slightly decreased. So as I mentioned, that it is slightly progressing, but the progress is very slow. Let me give you two examples. Okay. There are top 10 poorest countries in Asia, like North Korea, Nepal, Tajikistan, Yemen, Kyrgyzstan, Cambodia, Myanmar, Syria, Pakistan, India. This is the top 10 poorest countries in Asia. Let me give you two examples. North Korea, GDP per capita is only $651. About 60% of North Korea's population lives below the poverty line. And poor governance by the totalitarian regime, the free market is nearly non-existent in North Korea. So this is the scenario of North Korea. Let's look at the Yemen. GDP of per capita GDP of $851. About 79% people lives under the poverty line. Then 65% classified as extremely poor. They have low Human Development Index, HDI. Then, you know, I think it's civil war, corruption, and economic mismanagement. So it's happening in some of the Asian countries. Then let's talk about the goal number 2, zero hunger. So more than half of the world's hungry people also live in Asia. And 64% of all malnourished children in the world live in Asia. I think this information new to you, okay? So more than half of all starving children under 5 lived in Asia in 2017. Then in 2017, Asia accounted for more than 2/3 of all wasted children under 5. Then Southern Asia had the highest global hunger index, GHI, a score of only 30.9, indicating serious level of hunger. Then Asia and the Pacific is home to nearly 500 million. That means 479 million undernourished people. And out of that, and then 959 million people are experiencing moderate level food insecurity. We always talk about food security. See the scenario of Asia. Then 327 million in the severe food insecurity category. Then 80% of the severely food insecure are in South Asia. So let me give you an example. For example, Southern Asia, such as Afghanistan, Bangladesh, India, have the highest rate of undernourishment and the most number of the hungry people in Asia. But why? You can see the reason. Actually, we don't have time to explain the reason. That's very briefly, okay? Sanitation and hygiene, changing diets and obesity, gender inequality, urban versus rural malnutrition. Then let's look at the good health and well-being, the third goal of sustainable development. Healthcare system. Global leaders voice to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. However, Asia is facing serious healthcare issues. For example, healthcare in Myanmar. Have you heard the name of Myanmar? One of the Asian countries, okay? Is consistently ranked among the lowest in the world. The global average of healthcare cost paid out of pocket is 32%. Both public and private hospitals are understaffed due to national shortage of doctors and nurses. It's not only Myanmar, just I'm giving one example. Many countries in Asia are facing this problem, okay? So public hospitals lack many of the basic facilities and equipment. Then Myanmar faces extremely high HIV infection rates with great disparities between urban and rural areas. The rate of malaria in Myanmar is 6 times higher than the average in ASEAN, which is 90%, 90 per 100,000 person, okay? So Myanmar remains one of the 30 countries with the highest TB, tuberculosis rates globally. But why? Shortage of doctors, shortage of medical equipment, corruption, mismanagement, low budget, poor infrastructure. Then let's talk about the quality education is the Sustainable Development Goal 4. What is happening to Asia? Asian nations struggle to create elite universities without leaving behind millions who just need a college education. Asia in the world's poster child for increasing school enrollment, but the region faces high hurdles in taking the next step toward creating a world-class education system. Only few universities are world-class. Dropout rates are a persistent problem. Let me give you an example of Afghanistan. As estimated, 3.7 million children are out of school in Afghanistan. Out of 60% of them are girls. Can you imagine? There are currently over 3 million children out of school in Afghanistan. I'm talking only one country. It's not the entire Asia, okay? Out of these 3 million, 60% are female. Nearly 17% of Afghan girls get married before they turn 15, meaning that they leave school sooner than their male peers. So this is the what is called Sustainable Development Goal, which is quality education in Asia, okay? An example of Asia, okay? Then goal number 5, gender equality. Only 22.3% of women in India, 22.6% in Pakistan, then 38.4% in Bangladesh are active in the labor market. On average, in the region, the women's labor force participation rate is 51% of the male labor force participation rate. Then female literacy rates are as low as 53.7% in Afghanistan. Then 65.8% in India, 59.7% in Nepal, 57% in Bhutan, 46.5% in Pakistan, with little sign of closing in the near future. Then women remained equally underrepresented in the political sphere in this region. Then in no country is the share of women in parliament above 33%. In the three most populous countries, the share lies between 14 and 20%, and in some countries it is as low as 5.4% in Sri Lanka, then 4.6% in Maldives. Then let's talk about goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Nearly 1.8 billion people in Asia still lack access to proper sanitation, and nearly 700 million people still lack access to potable water. So despite the great progress, 610 million people in South Asia still practice open defecation, over 60% of the global burden. Then over 134 million people still do not have access to improved drinking water. Then it is currently estimated that in South Asia, between 68 to 84% of water sources are contaminated, polluted. Let's look at this example of India. See, 2014 and 15, they started to build toilet, 42%, 42.8%. Then it increases to 50.6% in 2015 and 16. Then it increases to 64.2% in 2016 and 17. That increases to 60%, 82.6%, 17, 18. Then it increases to 88.9%. So that means total number of household toilets built since October 2014, 79.5 million. So it's still many more to build household toilets. Okay, so this is an example of the clean water and sanitation. Then let's look at goal number 7. What is happening to Asia? Affordable and clean energy. The development of renewable energy projects in the region is an expensive bill for most Asian countries to put. Lack of experience and expertise in most of the Asian countries in evaluating the risk of renewable energy investment. Then the lack of regulatory framework is also a major hurdle when it comes to the introduction and development of renewable energy project. But the world's biggest CO2 emitter, who is that? Asia, China. Okay, if you look at this diagram, you can see. Okay, so a lack of coordination among governments, agencies, and private sectors, and there is a lack of policies and also limited infrastructure capacity. But some countries, they have taken some initiatives. For example, Malaysia has set a target to achieve 20% renewable energy capacity mix by 2025. This is a good move. Then decent work and economic growth in Asia. For example, let me give you an example of Bangladesh. Bangladesh has, I think you heard name of Bangladesh, okay? So Bangladesh has faced some key challenges for achieving decent work and inclusive growth, target of sustainable development, like increasing informality in job market, higher youth unemployment rate, mismatch between demand and supply of skilled labor, low female participation in labor force, low inflow of foreign direct investment, insufficient domestic investment for absorbing large labor force, then participation of child and forced labor in hazardous work. Then we can give another example. Philippines is seen booking the highest unemployment rate in Southeast Asia, with about 8 million Filipinos expected to lose their jobs as the coronavirus disease 2019. Okay. Then unemployment rate in Afghanistan increased to 11.2% in 2020 from 11.10% in 2019. Then Unemployment rate in Yemen increased to 13.42% in 2000 from 12.9% in 2019. Then the unemployment rate in Jordan surged to 24.7% in the fourth quarter of 2020 from 19% in the same period of the previous year. So amid the severe impact caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Then let's look at goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Okay. 22.6 billion people in developing countries do not have access to constant electricity. And there are several countries in South Asia, they don't have access to electricity. In developing countries, barely 30% of agricultural product undergo industrial processing compared to 98% high-income countries. See the gap, huge gap between developing and developed countries. Then more than 4 billion people still do not have access to the internet. 90% of them are in the developing world. Implementation of SDG 9 in least developed countries depend on manufacturing for their economies, such as Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, needs to stay aware of Industry 4.0. Excuse me. Yeah, but some countries already embraced Industry 4.0. Excuse me.
Thailand and Vietnam. Quite interesting, the gap between these countries. Thank you for highlighting the gap.
Thank you. Okay. Then let me talk about the goal number 10. Yeah? You see, the reduce inequalities, the target to reduce inequalities across the world. But what is happening to the Asia? The richest 1% in Thailand controls 58% of the country's wealth. Can you imagine? Then the top 10% earn 35 times more than the bottom 10%. Then Indonesia, the 4 richest men, they have more wealth than the poorest 100 million people. And about 50% of the country's wealth is in the hands of the top 1%.
Quite striking facts you are sharing with us. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Then Vietnam, if you look at the Vietnam, 210 of the country's super rich earn more than enough in a year to lift 3.2 million people out of the poverty. Then the country's richest man earns more in a day than the poorest person earned in 10 years. In Malaysia, what is happening to Malaysia? Only 0.6% of its 31 million people are living under the poverty line. 34% of the country's indigenous people and 7% of children in urban low-cost housing project live in poverty. In terms of Philippines, the average annual family income of the top 10% is estimated at US $14,708 in 2015, 9 times more than the lowest 10% at US dollar 1,609. So this is the, you see the gap, the huge inequality. But the world leaders introduced this goal to in order to reduce inequality, but still huge inequality exists across the world, not only Asia, but I am giving some facts and figure of Asian countries. Then sustainable cities and communities, sustainable development goal 11. The majority of growing Asian towns and cities use open dump sites, and only approximately 10% of solid waste ends up in properly engineered and managed landfill site. Then chemical production in the region is projected to increase by 46% over the period from 2012 and 2025. And the region generates 1 million tons of hazardous waste daily. So rapid industrialization, rising consumer demand, and population growth in the region demand improved management of chemicals and hazardous waste and regulation of industrial and consumer chemical pesticides. So Asia generated 18.2 million tons of e-waste in 2016, growing by 63% in 5 years in East and Southeast Asia, 2010 to 2015, with the highest quantity of e-waste generated in China alone, 7.2 million tons. Yeah, its time is going again. We have 10 minutes.
Yes, I'm sorry, but
okay, just quickly, okay.
Okay.
Goal number 12, 5 minutes. I'll finish within 5 minutes, okay?
Okay, thank you very much for your understanding.
Okay. So the sustainable consumption and production, you can see the increasing domestic and material consumption in Asia. So we are concerned about this issue. Then climate change, you know, Vietnam, Myanmar, the Philippines, the Thailand are among 10 countries in the world most affected by climate change in the past 20 years. So according to the Global Climate Risk Index, because there is absence of technical breakthrough, rice yield in Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam could drop by as much as 50% by 2100 from 1990 level. Okay, so these are we are facing this problem, and air pollution, and also 12 to 2 million death in China because of air pollution. So air pollution cuts life expectancy as well. Then goal number 14, life below water. Okay. Yeah, we are concerned about this because sea level is rising because of climate change, because all goals are interconnected. Okay, some countries will be uninhabitable by 2015. So you are lucky you are not there. You are not one of them. 11% land will disappear by 2050. Maldives, have you heard the name? The beautiful country Maldives will disappear completely by.
Wow.
But why? Because of our action: destructive fishing, marine pollution, knowledge gap on the sea and its content, institutional issues, lack of survey of our marine resources, development, and so on. Okay. Then life on land is decreasing. Remember the arrow I show, it is decreasing, and it is located red zone. Southeast Asia has the highest rate of deforestation. Any major tropical region losing 1.2% of forest annually. Vietnam has the second highest rate of forestation, then more than 90% of the old growth rainforest of the Philippines. Then other Southeast Asian countries where major deforestation is ongoing are Cambodia and Laos. Then 16, peace, justice, and a strong institution. Yeah, we are facing a lot of problems about this. The number of internal and external conflicts. There is an increase in violent crime, terrorism, insurgency, political instability in the region. This is closely linked to limited improvement in rule of law and protection of human rights, leading to an increase in the number of countries adopting policies to restrict civic space. The region has the highest number of journalists murdered. I think you have seen the news, as well as unsentenced detainees. Data shows increased perception of public sector corruption, that about 23.8% of businesses in the region have engaged in bribery. I think maybe you are not familiar with the bribery, okay? We are familiar with bribery, okay? Children and adolescents are particularly vulnerable to violence in the region. Over a third of the women in the region have faced sexual violence. And available data from 21 Asian countries shows that on average, 70.7% of children aged between 1 to 14 have experienced physical discipline or psychological aggression by caregivers in the last months. Okay, so this is the pathetic. Then last goal, last but not least, okay, partnership for the goals. In order to achieve all the goals, we need partnership. But progress towards this goal is necessary to ensure the region has the means of finance, target, and implement policy solution. But we have lack of low level of FDI, foreign direct investment, I mentioned earlier, okay? So failing to do so could jeopardize the achievement of all other goals. For example, revenue GDP is only 10.16% in 2017, while the milestone set for 2020 is at 16%, but only 10.16%. For selected South Asian countries, like, for example, we can mention Bangladesh, Nepal, India, okay, FDI GDP ratio was only 7.4% of GDP, only about half of the milestone level. Then a sharp decline in the flow of remittance since 2013, observed mainly because of lower labor demand in the oil-rich Middle East countries. Okay, so this is the brief scenario of Asian countries. Okay, but why? Lack of proper enforcement of the enacted laws and rules, poor infrastructure for collection of taxes, limited capacity to expand tax network are the reason behind poor revenue generation or to attract the foreign investor. Okay, so these are the 17 goals I have mentioned very briefly, okay, to share the scenario of Asia, what is happening in Asia. Maybe sometimes you can't realize what is happening in other parts of the world. So due to social media, we have the opportunity to share the scenario of Asia with all of you. Okay, so the last word, there is enough for everybody's need, but not for anybody's greed. Said by Mahatma Gandhi, is Indian lawyer, politician, social activist. So thank you. That's